The phone buzzed against the marble counter, a sharp vibration that cut through the quiet. I didn't look at the screen. I already knew who it was. My husband's keys jingled in the driveway. The porch light flickered on. I slid the device into my pocket and forced a smile before the front door opened. He walked in carrying grocery bags, his coat damp from the rain. I asked if he wanted tea. He said yes, his voice tired, trusting. I nodded and turned toward the kettle. My hands shook just enough for me to notice. I wondered how long I could keep pretending everything was still ours that we used to play a card game on Sunday nights. Just the three of us. My husband, his sister, and me. We called it harmless. Just a way to unwind after long work weeks. The kitchen table would get cleared. The overhead light hummed. We'd shuffle the deck and deal the cards. I always sat across from him. I always watched how his eyes softened when he laughed. I thought I knew every corner of that life. I thought I was exactly where I belonged. His sister moved into the guest room after her divorce. It was supposed to be temporary. She brought quiet habits and careful smiles. She helped with dishes. She folded laundry without being asked. She never raised her voice. I liked her, or I told myself I did. We started sharing more than just chores. We shared small complaints. We shared tired sighs. We shared the empty space between us when he worked late. I told myself it was just sisterhood. I told myself it was just support. The game became our routine. We'd play until midnight. We'd drink cheap wine. We'd talk about nothing important. I liked the rhythm. I liked the safety. I didn't notice the line moving until it was already behind me. I thought loyalty meant staying in the same room. I didn't know it meant guarding the same truth. I kept shuffling. I kept dealing. I kept pretending the silence between cards was just quiet. It wasn't quiet. It was waiting. And I was too tired to ask what for. It started with a misplaced card. Or maybe I misplaced it on purpose. I slid a queen under the table. I let my fingers brush the wood. I let my knee rest against hers. It was an accident. I told myself it was an accident. She didn't pull away. She didn't speak. She just looked down at the deck and kept playing. The room felt suddenly smaller. The clock ticked louder. I felt a strange heat in my chest. I told myself to stop. I didn't stop. The next Sunday, I brought stronger wine. I poured it without asking. I watched her take the glass. I watched her fingers wrap around the stem. She thanked me. Her voice was softer than usual. I felt my pulse jump. I looked at the hallway. I listened for his footsteps. I heard nothing but the hum of the refrigerator. We kept playing. We kept talking. We started talking about things we shouldn't. She mentioned the divorce. She mentioned the loneliness. I nodded. I said I understood. I didn't just understand. I felt it. I started leaving the game early. I told myself I was tired. I told myself I needed air. I stood in the driveway instead. I watched the streetlights flicker. I replayed every glance. I replayed every pause. I wondered if she noticed. I wondered if she wanted me to notice. I went back inside. I sat down. I dealt the cards. She smiled. It wasn't a polite smile. It was a knowing one. I felt my stomach drop. I felt something else too. Something I couldn't name. I kept my eyes on the table. I didn't trust myself to look up. I started changing my clothes before game night. I picked softer fabrics. I wore the perfume he said he liked. I caught myself in the hallway mirror. I looked different. I looked guilty. I told myself it was just vanity. I told myself it was just confidence. But the mirror didn't lie. I was dressing for an audience of one. I walked back into the kitchen. The cards were already shuffled. She was waiting. I sat down. I reached for my drink. My hand trembled just enough to make the ice clink. I wondered how long I could keep pretending I didn't want this. The game stopped being about the cards. It became a test. I tested how close I could sit. I tested how long I could hold eye contact. I tested how much I could say without saying it. She passed every test. She leaned in when I spoke. She laughed at my quiet jokes. She touched my wrist when she reached for the salt. Each touch felt heavier than the last. I felt the weight of it. I felt the pull of it. I started keeping score in my head, not of the game, Of us, he worked late more often. I told myself it was just the season. I told myself it was just business. I didn't check his schedule. I didn't want to know. I just waited for Sunday. I just waited for her. I started texting her during the week. Nothing dangerous. Just check-ins. Just weather updates. Just little questions that didn't need answers. She always replied. She always used my name. It felt like a secret. It felt like a promise. I deleted the thread every night. I kept writing it every morning. One evening, he came home early. The front door clicked open. I froze in the kitchen. My phone was face down on the counter. The screen was still glowing. I heard his coat drop. I heard his shoes scrape the floor. I grabbed a towel. I wiped the counter. I acted busy. He walked in. He smiled. He asked what I was making. I said nothing. I said I was just cleaning. He nodded. He walked toward the living room. I let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding. My chest felt tight. I wondered if he'd seen the screen. I wondered if he'd ever look again. That I started lying to him. Small lies. Harmless lies. I said I was reading. I said I was watching a show. I said I was tired. I wasn't. I was waiting for a notification. I was waiting for her. I felt sick. I felt alive. I hated the split inside me. I wanted to stop. I wanted to keep going. The guilt sat in my stomach like a stone. The thrill sat in my chest like a spark. I couldn't put either one down. I just carried both. She started asking questions I couldn't answer. She asked what I wanted. She asked if I was happy. She asked if I ever thought about leaving. I stayed quiet. I stared at the floor. I heard the clock tick. I heard my own breathing. I finally looked up. I said I didn't know. She didn't push. She just reached across the table. She covered my hand with hers. Her skin was warm. Her grip was steady. I didn't pull away. I didn't move at all. I just sat there, trapped between two lives, watching the cards gather dust. The next Sunday, he stayed home. He sat at the head of the table. He dealt the cards. I watched his hands. I watched the way his fingers moved. I realized I hadn't looked at them like that in years. He made a joke. I laughed too loud. He glanced at me. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. I said I just had a headache. He nodded. He went back to shuffling. The room felt crowded. The air felt thin. I looked at her. She looked at the floor. I knew then that the game was over. I just didn't know what we were playing for anymore. He went to the garage to grab more ice. The door clicked shut behind him. The kitchen was suddenly empty. I stood up to clear the glasses. She stood up to help me. We met at the sink. The water ran cold. I turned it off. The silence rushed back in. She didn't step back. I didn't step back. We just stood there, inches apart, breathing the same heavy air. She reached out. She touched my cheek. Her thumb traced my jawline. I closed my eyes. I felt my knees weaken. I heard my own heartbeat in my ears. She whispered my name. It wasn't a question. It was an invitation. I leaned into her hand. I let the wall fall. I finally stopped fighting it. The garage door handle turned. I pulled back. I stepped away. I grabbed a dish towel. I wiped my face. I acted normal. I forced my hands to stay still. The door opened. He walked in carrying a bag of ice. He smiled. He didn't notice. Or he chose not to. He poured the ice into the bucket. He sat back down. He asked whose turn it was. I picked up my cards. My hands were steady now. The fear was gone. The guilt was gone. Only the truth remained. And I knew I couldn't hide it anymore, that I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake listening to his breathing. I listened to the steady rhythm of a man who still trusted me. I stared at the ceiling. I traced the cracks in the plaster. I counted them like sins. I knew what I had done. I knew what I had allowed. I knew it wasn't just a touch. It was a choice. I made it in the quiet. I made it in the dark. I made it while he was in the next room. The next morning, the house felt different. The walls felt thinner. The floorboards creaked louder. I made coffee. I set out 3 mugs. I poured 2. I left the third empty. I didn't know why. Maybe I was waiting for her. Maybe I was waiting for him to notice. He walked in. He kissed my forehead. He asked if I slept well. I said yes. I lied again. I couldn't. Stop. She stayed in the guest room. I heard her shower. I heard her footsteps. I heard her pack a bag. The zipper pulled shut. It sounded like a door closing. I stood in the hallway. I didn't move. I didn't speak. She walked out with her suitcase. She stopped in front of me. She looked tired. She looked relieved. She handed me a folded piece of paper. I didn't open it. I just watched her walk down the steps. I watched her car drive away. I stood there until the taillights disappeared. He came home that evening. He noticed the missing car. He asked where she went. I said she needed space. I said it was for the best. He nodded. He didn't ask more. He trusted my words. That was the worst part. He still believed me. I felt the weight of that trust crush me. I went to the bedroom. I closed the door. I finally opened the paper. It was just one sentence. It said, "I'm sorry, but I can't stay in a house built on silence." I dropped it on the bed. I sat on the floor. I cried for the first time in months. I cried for him. I cried for her. I cried for the woman I used to be. I never told him. Not then. Not ever. I let the silence do the work it always did. I let the game fade into memory. I stopped buying wine. I stopped clearing the table. I stopped waiting for Sundays. I just lived. I just stayed. I learned how to carry the weight without breaking. I learned how to smile without meaning it. I learned how to love a man while mourning the truth. The house stayed quiet. The card stayed in the drawer. I never played again. I don't miss it. I don't miss the thrill. I miss the person I was before I crossed the line. I miss the certainty. I miss the innocence. I keep the folded paper in a drawer. I look at it sometimes. I don't read it. I just remember. I remember the touch. I remember the choice. I remember the cost that we still sit at the same table. We still drink our coffee. We still talk about the weather. We never talk about her. We never talk about the game. I wonder if he knows. I wonder if he feels the space where she used to be. I don't ask. I don't plan to. Some truths aren't meant to be spoken. Some are just meant to be carried. I carry mine. I always will. I finally understand the game. You don't play to win. You play to see how much you're willing to lose before the table flips.